I'm intimidated by you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
For podcasts?
Yes, I have to kind of like get you warmed up. We have to do warm-up exercises, breathing like la 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 la.
Oh. No, I thought you were going to say I was using like grounding exercises.
5 things I can see.
Yeah, dude. Why are you saying it like that? Are you making
sensations in your body?
Are you making fun of grounding exercises? You too?
Certainly not.
Okay.
I'm making fun of the preposterousness of you having to use a grounding exercise. Clearly, you would never
used a grounding exercise. Hold on. Now,
are you saying you're above it?
No, I'm not. I probably should use it. I mean, my grounding exercises. Oh, that reminds me. My grounding exercises usually involve breaking something.
Yeah. Like you smash things on the ground. That's your grounding,
right?
Yeah.
But Amy, we'll have this on good authority though. Like, and I want you to be honest here. Okay, I want you to be honest.
All right.
When we do a presentation, right? Because that's where you saw our lovely guest today was at a presentation, right? Who stresses about that, and who does way more prep work than the other?
What do you want an inside track on this?
Well, I'm just telling you. I put slides together, and I'm like, dude, I don't even look at them till we go that day. And then you, my friend, are the one. Do you know what slides you're doing? I need like, yeah, you're the one who stresses about it. So let's not talk about presenting
do you
publicly.
Want the inside story on this?
I'm sorry, you have to be here for this. Yeah, what's the inside story for this?
So I've learned that sometimes it's like, so if we're on like an airplane and, my wife and I are flying somewhere, and she's, she gets really nervous about turbulence. But if I get even more nervous about the turbulence, she calms me down and then she feels better paradoxically. And so really I'm kind of doing that for you.
Oh,
it's a sacrifice.
I've never once been nervous for a presentation.
That's because I've calmed you down.
Okay. But hey, going back to your point of the grounding, dude, I was just talking about this before we started. I got a new job. And anybody who's listening, any listeners, this might be your dream job, okay? I just want to we got to workshop the name of this so I can put a job description together and put it out on Indeed. Okay. So I just need somebody full-time to sit by me, okay, while we're working. And anytime that I lose my temper, which is multiple times a day, just hand me a pencil so I can snap it, okay? Just that's it. That's it, right? Just have a box of Ticonderogas.
Those are hard to snap. Those are the good pencils.
But do you know how many times a day I just
pencil.
Yeah, exactly. And what would we call that though?
Mace's lack of regulation.
The job title.
The job title.
Yeah. Well, yeah. You're right. You're right.
Like pencil squire.
Pencil squire.
Pencil. Yeah. But they'd have to get used to it as well. Like be ready to know when I need it. You know what I mean?
See you ramping up.
Right. Because and I feel like that will offset the eventual heart attack I'm going to have. Right. Yeah. Like
pencil squire is a lifesaver.
Yeah. Well, should we introduce our guest here?
I suppose. Oh yeah.
And your last name again though? Daeschel. I was gonna say Daeschel, which has anybody ever said that?
That relates a little bit more to you than me, but that's all right.
True.
Return, sir.
That is true. I will take that. Yeah. It's kind of how it has to go. Yeah. So Amy is fortunately or unfortunately, I'm gonna roll with fortunately, one of my former students, and then also has done some really good work in the field of addiction. And we saw her present at the Utah Criminal Justice. That's it. Convention. UCJC. There we go. Okay.
Got you.
Excellent work. That was with. Well, I'll let you talk about that. But so yeah, Amy Daeschel.
Yep.
Okay. Why did I think the other way? I don't know why I thought that.
I can't explain the inner workings of your brain.
Yeah, you don't want to either. You don't want to either. Well, and so yeah. First of all, I mean, congrats because you just got you showed me today something really cool that you got from Daeschel, right?
I just got my first licensure.
Okay.
Thank God.
Nice.
Like it feels like it's paying off finally.
Which is what's the official license that you got?
So just certified ASUDC.
Right. Which I mean, I will take credit that had she not met me along the way, that she wouldn't have gotten that. So
it's all Mace.
We'll go with that.
Yeah.
Want to explain what that is?
So certified advanced substance use disorder certificate. So
Nice.
Formerly
Bachelor's
called
level.
formerly called a what was that? Like a LSAC.
Oh, is that what that's what that is now?
No. That's what that is. Yeah.
And LSAC is now a certified substance abuse. What is it?
Which LSAC was a licensed substance abuse counselor, right?
Yeah. That's not a thing anymore?
No, they changed it, which probably good because, we have our LCSWs and there's CSWs. So would that mean that you were a SAC?
I'm glad they changed it.
Yeah. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
Otherwise, what was it?
They were forced to change it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a SAC. Well, I know that, but what's your clinical certification? So you work that is primarily for clients with a substance use disorder,
Yes.
right?
Uh-huh.
Okay. And you went through a program for that specifically, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then now what are you doing?
So now I work for Rasa Legal is what I'm doing now. I'm
Okay.
doing my master's. So I still have 2 semesters left for my master's
In social work?
in social work.
At your alma mater, too.
Yeah.
Is that the word for it?
That's the word.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And you have you too, I learned along the way, have a history of substance use as well, right?
I do.
Okay. So, well, congrats on that as well. I think like that's one of the things that I think is useful for today is it's always nice. I need to figure this out too. I always feel bad because when we do these segments, because we have these before, Amy religiously listens to our podcast. She's never missed an episode. In fact, she told me she falls asleep to it every night. So
Probably when I start talking.
yeah,
Here
you
we
do have
go.
a soothing voice. Mine feels like somebody's pouring nails and Drano in your ears.
That's why we balance each other well.
I got it. I need to figure out a filter or something. But if you ever seen we usually call this segment "Villains to Victory," right? But you don't strike me as a villain though. We got to figure something else out. It'll
Wow.
probably just be Villains to Victory, but hey.
It's the segment. Yeah.
Yeah, I wonder if that might be a good place to start, like, because that's a long, hard road out of hell to get to where you are right now, and I think that's pretty fascinating for a lot of listeners to hear how things were bad and then you were able to crawl out from that. So tell us a little bit about that. How'd that all come about?
So not your typical story, right? So normal childhood, parents married 35 years and loving family, good student, all the things. Raised in the church, got married at 19. So like life was just normal all the way up until I hit about 35.
Mm-hmm.
And my whole world came falling apart.
Wow,
So I had
35, huh?
35. I had 12-foot surgeries and they prescribed OxyContin and they had me, and this went over a year and a half, went through 3 different surgeons to correct the damage that the original surgeon did. And so they had me on so much pain medication. I was taking 5 30-milligram oxys a day.
Wow. What was the original injury?
It was just a routine surgery. Just a
No way.
routine bunion correction.
What?
Oh,
routine.
yeah, that's not a big surgery.
So now I've got nerve damage, like I've got all kinds of damage.
And that was the original surgeon wrecked your foot that bad. You had to
wrecked
get.
it.
So this was
It took 3 surgeons to correct it.
So this is just a bunion removal, and because of the botched surgery, that led to a bunch of other corrections. But of course, that's your feet, and that's a really bad place to be dealing with that. So then the oxys were prescribed associated with that.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I mean, and it was, I kept going back to the same surgeon initially, and that was his cure for it. Okay, just take these, it's going to heal. Take these, it's going to heal. And it just wouldn't heal. And it just kept reopening and reopening and more damage and more damage. And
What year was that when it first happened?
oh gosh, let's see, I'm 45 now. So it was 10 years ago.
Oh, that's right about when like Oxy was still popping at
Yeah.
that point too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, that's when it was like so easy to get, right? But I didn't know, I mean, I didn't know it was going to just awake this demon in me. And
Sure.
I got so dependent upon the medication. So
Yeah.
I wasn't like knowledgeable about withdrawals or what that is or this and that, and I was working in the mortgage industry. So I had a career in the mortgage industry. I was married at the time, and my life just fell apart. Mom commits suicide. Like, she went through a 15-year breakdown.
Whoa.
And so I was like right in the middle of all of that, trying to help my dad with her, keep her alive. Domestic violence marriage. So I was going through a divorce at the end of it. And started treating all this emotional trauma with the pills, right? Because I knew what they did, right? And doctor finds out, severs me from the pain medication, and I can't go through with the withdrawal. I'm going through a divorce. I've got 2 kids to support, so I start paying for this medication, just from people I knew. I used to be a former bartender back in my 20s. I had connections. I need to make a paycheck to take care of my children.
Sure.
So I was just buying these pills, $80 a pills, where I was working for pills, right?
Wow.
And my ex-husband absconds with my kids out of state.
Yeah.
As we're going through the divorce, just kidnaps them. I had full custody. So between the trauma of just losing my mom, not knowing how to cope, and you take my freaking children away from me, like, boom. Boom. I was just medicating like it was nobody's business.
So initially this was not, I mean, I don't know if anybody ever starts that, like, man, I want to get an addiction going here. Obviously I have pain that's associated with, this surgery, but then life kind of took a shit on you along the way, like it does. And then it started to be a coping mechanism, it sounds like.
Oh, 100%.
Right. And then a lot of this stuff just, I mean, geez, God, who wouldn't want to numb out from all that crap, that was happening then? Which kind of, that's what it sounds like was happening.
Yeah, and it just kept increasing. So when all this was going on, my kids are gone. I'm taking care of my dad because he's going through an emotional breakdown at the loss of my mom. I mean, with good reason, right?
Right. Who wouldn't?
He's diabetic, not taking care of himself, and has an aneurysm. So now I've got my dad to take care of. And so it was just boom, 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 all within a 6-month period.
That was within a 6-month period?
In a 6-month period. All of that in a 6-month period. And so it just got to the point of...
How deep into... So the foot surgery and all the recorrections, like, you got on the dose that you were taking. How far into you taking opiates did that whole slew of crap happen? Was that like a couple years deep into it?
So I was on them for 1.5 years, medically prescribed.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
Yeah, medically prescribed. And then the 6 months after that period is when it was just a downfall. So the doctor severs me. I can't go through the withdrawal. I can't sustain myself. I can't pay the bills. Kids are gone. It's when the kids left is when it really turned into an addiction. That's when I was coping. That's when I was numbing. That's when I didn't know how to deal. And I just started increasing the amount of opiates I was taking to where it was not affordable anymore. So then you seek other options, right?
And that was, and that seems like it was a deliberate effort, right? Like, because so many bad things were going on. And I mean, just many islands of relief would feel really good at that point, just from dealing with all that. Did you along the way, like prior to then, did you ever start to think, man, this is going to be an issue? You mentioned not knowing about withdrawals or anything like that. Did you ever along the way be like, oh no, this is going to be trouble?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first withdrawal, when I experienced that first withdrawal of like, okay, I can just go off of these. Like, it's getting too expensive. Let's just be done. I tried. And that withdrawal was brutal. I wanted to die. I literally wanted to die. And I'm like, I cannot function like this. I will do anything to not feel this way.
Wow.
Yeah, it was intense.
Yeah. I always think about like the Sackler family and what they're doing with I mean, untold billions associated with all this stuff, because I can't remember what, it obviously was uncovered that obviously they knew all this was going to happen with oxys and everything like that. But, and I was like, man, the equation that they must have done in their head.
Care?
Well, the sinisterness of it is like, okay, if I don't know what they made on it, but let's say they made $12 billion and then they had to pay $5 billion or, for all the lawsuits and
they did that
calculus and everything.
Didn't they?
And I was like, oh, you still made $7 billion, son. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just how just dirty that is. That's crazy. That's crazy to have to, and knowing full well that people were going to go through the experience that you went through. And people say I'm an asshole. I mean, come on, dude. Like, I mean, maybe I still am. I'm just saying there's worse people out there, folks.
Dude. Yeah, that's wild. So into your initial withdrawal, like, I don't know, there's going to be some people. I mean, Mason and I work at Weber County Jail, and so, we see a lot of people that are day 2, day 3 into, a withdrawal from, fentanyl or whatever it is. And so we see a bit about what that's like, but I think there might be some listeners that don't know what that experience is actually like. And I was wondering if you're willing to take us through just kind of like, sort of just a brief maybe timeline of what is last dose of opiates and then sort of like what happens in the next few days.
Yeah. Well, first thing I want to make clear is that withdrawing from OxyContin versus withdrawing from heroin, and we'll get into that story of how I fell into heroin, right?
Oh, okay.
10 times worse than a heroin withdrawal.
Oh.
Prescription medication was 10 times worse of a withdrawal than it was coming off of heroin. I don't know if it's because it's a medication.
Kind of makes sense. It's like, right.
But
it's like medically manufactured to be more efficient, right? Like versus, I don't pretend to know how heroin.
So it's a more effective drug, meaning it hits those synapses more effectively. So,
yeah. Like, and you've probably heard this too. A lot of my clients have shared with me that a Suboxone withdrawal or a methadone withdrawal is way worse than a heroin withdrawal.
I didn't know this.
Heroin's just not nearly as
pure.
Sure.
The purity associated with and the effectiveness in terms of like delivery systems, or the binding agents to
that makes sense.
either.
I never considered that, but that makes sense. I didn't know that.
So you're going through the worst withdrawals. So you start that, and then how soon after you stop do the symptoms start to set in?
Oh, within hours.
Within hours. Wow.
So it would be like every 8 hours that I would need like a pill or something. And so within the first couple hours, when I'd start to go in withdrawal, like you're very lethargic. You're feeling on edge. You're feeling really anxious. By the midday, on your first day of withdrawal, like your skin starts to crawl. You get really hot. You get really cold. You're sweating. You're uncomfortable. You're just restless. By that night, you are not sleeping. You are throwing up. You are having digestive problems. Like you can't eat. And for me, my experience was what pushed me over the edge to where I would go seek out was I wanted to rip my spine out. There's this feeling that just rolls down through your spine that I cannot explain. Like somebody who's been through a withdrawal can relate, but you have this horrific feeling down your spine to where you literally want to dig into your spine and just rip it out.
Wow.
It is the worst feeling. And that's usually about day 3. Okay. Day 4, you're just super sick. You don't want to talk to anybody. Day 5, you start to feel a little better.
So day 3's peak.
Day 3's the worst.
Okay.
Day 3's the worst always. Yeah, that's when you just can't take it anymore. That's when you're calling everybody you know.
Yeah,
that's when you have the spine ripping.
I will give you my car for a hit. Like it's that intense of a need.
Like desperation sounds like.
Complete desperation.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Which I think that narrative is important because people like, I don't know, it's if they see it portrayed in like movies and stuff, it's always just showing somebody like that looks kind of sick, and people are like, well, I've been sick before. Why don't you just deal with them? Like,
exactly.
Okay, nobody's talking about your cold, Jimmy.
Yeah,
like, like it's a little bit. I've never been that sick before.
I've had a fever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've had to drink some Sprite.
Yeah.
Sip on some noodles. Like, I never like that. That sounds like horrible.
I say a great description. I don't know if great's the word I'm looking for, but definitely it paints a picture.
Well, and the weird thing about that is like, even when you're really, really sick, like I think about like stomach flu, right? Like, stomach flu, it's not comparable to that, but to me, that's about as close as I can get as to being really sick and miserable. Like you can't drink anything. You can't, if you move, you throw up, you know what I mean? And I'm like, is there something I can just take to stop this from happening? Like, is there, and you can't, there's nothing, because even if you try to take a medication that calms your stomach down, you throw that up too. And I was like, okay, dummies, listen, if you're going through a withdrawal and you feel like that, but there is a guaranteed pill, or not necessarily a pill, but there's something you could take and immediately feel better. I was like, you do it every single time.
That's
you do it
wild to
every
think of
single
it that
time,
way.
dummy. Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
it is for sure,
Right.
but they don't have the comparison. So that's what I'm saying is, so and yes, you're feeling off for different reasons, right? Like your biological ecosystem's kind of changed a little bit because of the drug use, but at the same time, like who wouldn't want to just feel back to normal?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Like it's got to be like so alluring. Just one phone call.
Yeah. Well,
One phone call and you're feeling better.
I think you have to really take in, I mean, you labeled it perfectly, desperation, right? It's not just the physical hell that you're going through that makes you seek it out. It is that complete belief that you are literally going to die if you do not take this feeling away. That's very important to like know, because most people are like, you're just sick, tough it up, blah, blah, blah. And I used to be one of those people, right? Before I fell into addiction, I used to be that person of like, I can never understand how somebody can rob a pharmacy. You go through that type of withdrawal and you will so quickly understand why people do what they do, because you literally can't explain it. It's not just being sick. You get to such a mental state of, I will do anything, or I am going to die, or you wish you were dead.
You know what part of it I think is? I think part of it is I don't think other people like to imagine that they're capable of getting to that point, right? It's easier to just paint the picture that this is a bad person, and
addiction happens to other people,
right? They were a flawed character from Jump Street, and that's a lot easier to do that than imagine like, oh wait, what if I had a bad surgery and I was dealing with pain management and this, you know what I mean? Like it's I think it's to cast it as this is a bad character, put you in a position of well, they're different than me. That's way different than me, versus just acknowledging that who wouldn't want to feel better, and you know, just I'm totally capable of being at a point where I'm desperate enough I'd do anything to feel better.
I mean, it hits people from all walks of life. I mean, you were saying that you didn't start getting into that until you say 35?
35.
That seems like late. Dude.
That's way late.
Late in the game.
Yeah.
And I was a bartender for 15 years in the drug scene, in the party scene.
No
Never
problems.
had an issue.
Yeah.
Wasn't my, I mean, did I dabble here and there in my 20s? Sure, let's be honest, right? But was it ever an issue? No, nothing ever took a hold of me. Like opiates awoke a demon that I never knew I had. Took a hold of me in a way that I could have never have imagined.
Yeah.
You know, the way you were describing the thoughts that go through your head, like that intensity is like startling almost. It's almost like it's like with you right now, even when you describe it. Just the memory of what that likes to be like pulled into that desire just to get that fix.
Yeah. It's almost like I've kind of like things like that. That's really helpful, even for like when I try to think about that, and whenever I think about like, because like I think about drugs, and everybody does this. Everybody thinks about drugs they might like, right? Like to try. And I always thought, man, cocaine looks awesome. You know what I mean? Plenty of 80s movies and everything, you know? And,
Scarface.
Well, yeah, there was a time in America, it was like mid-Coke, pre-AIDS, that, man, the country was on fire. You know, it was like best time to be alive. You know what I mean?
Those discos were popping.
Yeah. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah. And then I was like, but then I thought about that. I was like, dude, I feel like if I were to try it, I would like it way too much. And it would, like you said, awaken a part of me that I think is better left on, like unawoken. You know what I mean?
It's good that, and that's the thing, just to kind of go back to something you were saying, it's good that you like recognize that in yourself rather than having the it couldn't happen to me type mindset.
Right.
You know?
Same reason like when I was a kid and I didn't do that, you know, looking in the mirror and saying Candyman 3 times or what?
Not taking my chances.
Like, damn, dude, I ain't gonna try Coke either. So, so the withdrawals got to the point where you were obviously using, but $80 a pill, that is so expensive.
$80 a pill.
So that's usually the kind of the pathway, correct me if I'm wrong, that most people say this is unsustainable. Right. And not only that, just access. I mean, even if you have all the money in the world, like oxys seem, especially nowadays, really hard to come by. And that was kind of the pathway to heroin, yeah?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was that first introduction to a $10 bag of heroin. $80 or a $10 bag of heroin.
Is that kind of is that a fair direct comparison? So $80 worth of synthetic opiates, whatever it is the $80 for that about equivalent to a $10 bag of heroin? Like as far as like
one pill for $80
dose or
yeah, the dose is the same.
Okay.
And like the length of your relief is the same, but the high isn't the same.
Now, did you actually? I'd be curious to know what the difference is with the high. But I'm wondering if like you had to do any mental gymnastics to like go from like, all right, this is something that doctors created to like kind of the stigma that comes with heroin. I'm wondering if you had to like how you made it okay with yourself, or bypassed the whatever that barrier was that kept you from going down the route of heroin. Like how did you make it okay with yourself?
It wasn't even a question. It was a solution.
Just like
right.
that.
It was just like that. It was like, you know what? $10 and I don't have to feel like this. It was that quick. And within 2 months from the first dose of heroin, I was homeless.
And was it
legit?
Wow.
Homeless.
And was it like IV usage right away?
No. I started smoking first. So I was like, okay, I'm going to be a little careful. This is heroin, the big H, And so I would just smoke on the foils, and it would give me the relief that I needed to where I'm not sick. And I was still holding a job at this time.
Sure.
And it just started progressing. So the difference between the two is when I would take OxyContin, being a pharmaceutical, it didn't make me lethargic. I legit felt like Superwoman on these pills.
I see.
I could do anything. I was focused. I was on fire. I was like, this is when I was still in the mortgage industry when I was on the oxys. And so, I mean, I would kill it unless I was going through a withdrawal, right?
Yeah.
But heroin is such a different drug. One, it's not pure, two, so you don't know what you're getting in it. But it took me to a place of darkness that I never could have imagined. It was literally like going from Superwoman to having my soul sucked out of me.
So the functional aspect of it.
Completely different.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you can, I mean, like that seems like there's, I mean, that kind of tracks a lot with, we've talked about this before. Like, I mean, it seems like there's some, and I'm not saying any drug. We all know drugs are bad. We all graduated DARE. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that like some drugs you can function on for quite a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Like meth stands out to me. Like people, I mean, I'm not advocating for methamphetamine. What I'm saying is because of the nature of it, people are able to keep things on track for a long time, or even alcohol for that matter.
Truckers can make a good living.
Well, right. Or shit, I watched all the seasons of Mad Men, and those dudes were perpetually drunk. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, but heroin seems like it's only a matter of time. Yeah. Like once heroin starts, there is like that is the only matter of time drug, like of all of them. Like there is no way of keeping it on the rails at that point.
Yeah.
So you were saying then that smoking heroin, you were still able to, because you said within how long you were homeless?
So I was homeless for 2 years.
But like into using heroin. So you went from pills to heroin
within 2 months.
Within 2 months.
Yeah.
And you started out smoking it.
Mm-hmm.
So that just kind of speaks to what Mace is saying, that like it's. You said it awoke a darkness in you.
Oh, it did.
What does that mean?
It did. So it's a hard thing to explain. A lot of people ask me this, and it's so hard to put into words. I mean, it's one of those things that you have to experience. It's like a state of hopelessness. It's such a different high that you're just like, it just numbs you out, but you're so completely numb to where you're just trying not to live life, right? And it just starts to build this darkness and this hopelessness of you are not worthy, you are not this, and you're doing heroin, and the shame starts coming in. I can't explain what the difference is, but it's such a different type of high that I literally would just go sit down on the corner and wait for my next hit of heroin, right? And it would just build. So within 3 months of me smoking, I smoked for 3 months, then the IV came. Right. I started building this tolerance on smoking it. Like, this isn't lasting long enough. And I'm homeless, and now I need a longer hit. And like the desperation just keeps building, and you'll do anything to not have to feel sick again. And so then I started to inject.
You know how you said that going from pills to heroin, it was an easy jump. It is like, it was out of necessity, just boom, right to it. Right. Mm-hmm. Now I'm wondering, a lot of people, I've talked to people that have, gone through recovery before, and they'll say, at one point in my life, I told myself I'd never put a needle in my arm. Then look at me now. And so at one point it must have been a taboo for you, or something like, well, as long as I'm not shooting up or whatever. Did you have that And if so, how did you bypass that the first time you decided to actually shoot up?
Initially, yes, which is why I chose to smoke it, right? You know, I was like, you know, my brother was a long-term meth user, you know, our family suffered a lot through his addiction when I was younger. And I was like, I will never do meth. That's just one thing I'll never do. I can't do it. I saw what it did to my brother, blah, 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 blah. You know, and nobody, like you said, nobody grows up to be an addict. Like I did everything that Utah girls are supposed to do, right? I got married in the temple. I was raised LDS. I did everything right. I went to college, you know. Never could I have imagined that I would put a needle into my arm, right? So the first time I did was very intimidating, very scary, and I really had a hard time with it. I had to have somebody else do it for me. I was terrified. Terrified. So I did have those internal moments of like, don't do this. This is bad. You're going to die. Right. So I had that narrative going on within my head. But after that first shot, forget about it.
Yeah.
Really?
I'll bet the intensity was
intense.
well, and I mean, it sounds like the way you're describing that, it is kind of hard to describe because you're saying like a feeling of hopelessness and shame. But hopelessness and shame would also like indicate that you give a shit at the same time. You know what I mean? Like if you're hopeless, that means you like, it's like you have, you know, you thought you had a future and now you don't. And as a result of that, you're like, oh man, I've lost all hope. Or shameful, like you feel bad about things that you've done and who you are. So it's like those things, but also at the same time numb to the point where you don't give a shit, like simultaneously. What a state of mind that must be. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, the fix becomes more important than the feelings.
Right.
You know?
Can you explain that?
Yes. So, you know, you're in such a place of desperation, right? And your body needs this to function, right? Because you have convinced yourself that you will die if you don't have this feeling or if you don't maintain this to where you don't have a withdrawal. So the fix becomes the necessity. Everything else goes out the window. And the longer I was out there using and the longer that I was shooting up and the longer that I was trying to feed that need within my body, nothing else mattered. I can tell you, I'd sit on this corner. I was on the same street for 2 years, literally sleeping on the street, tents, tarps in the middle of winter on the same street for 2 years. And I remember I woke up and it's Christmas and I'm like, holy shit, it's Christmas. Right. And then the next holiday would go. And the next, and just time was just
in a fog, weren't you?
Passing. Well, and then you're just taking anything you can get on the street until you can get your next heroin hit.
God.
Right. So it was meth, it was heroin, it was whatever you got. Like, if you don't know, give it to me, I'll tell you what it does. That's where you go. Right. It becomes that basic need of necessity of to just function. To stay, I mean, and that's how you think. I need this to stay alive. I need this to function. I need this, and nothing else matters. Soon, like as time progressed, I convinced myself my kids are better off without me. I don't care if I die, you know, and my life is worth not living anymore. You know, 2 overdoses.
So Jesus. Like, did you just pull out of them? Somebody used Narcan, or what happened with overdoses? One of them I pulled out of him. I was in a hotel room by myself, robbed some dude on the street, $600, went and got myself a hotel and bought a whole bunch $600?
of drugs.
Jeez, what was that guy doing with $600?
I don't know, but
I've never had $600
not
in my
my
pocket.
finest moment. If he's listening, find me. I got you. I will pay you back.
Yeah.
But I loaded up on the heroin I got, and what I did was I would put the heroin and the meth in the same shot, they call it a goofball, and I'd shoot them both up at the same time, right? Because it was just I needed more. I needed it to be more intense.
You said that's called a goofball? Oh, okay, yeah.
And so I loaded up one of the biggest shots I've ever done, right? And so I'm in this hotel room by myself, shoot it up, and I was gone. I was out. Came out of it, thank God, with the needle still hanging out of my arm.
Oh, you went right out.
I was out. Second time I was in the park.
Yeah.
And the guy, and this is when Utah harm reduction was starting to really get popular.
Yeah.
Because Mindy Vincent, she started really pushing it out on the streets.
Right.
And so naloxone was starting to get flooded on the streets. And luckily, because I went out at the park and a guy at the park injected me.
Wow.
And I came out of that one.
Yeah, man, I heard some weird stories about that, like Narcan and naloxone. Like it was, because it's been around for a while.
Yeah.
Like it's not a new thing, but because it was like controversial, obviously, like because you can do a prescription and just get it, and it's like, she did a lot to get what's her name again? Mindy
Vincent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give a 30-second explanation of what Narcan is?
Well, it's just a chemical, I guess. I don't know what the hell to call it. Yeah. That you put up people's nose, and there's a few different ways. Like there's a few different things, but you just spray it up their nose, and it immediately takes off all the opiates that's bonded to your opiate receptor. So it immediately pulls you out of withdrawal, like super quick. Or it pulls you out of overdose, like right away.
And then only for opiates.
Only for opiates. That's right. It only works for opiates. So, but I remember hearing, I think it was a presentation that she did, and I was sitting in, but I remember it got a little unpopular for a minute because I know police officers would like give it to people who weren't overdosing, and then of course they'd go into immediate withdrawals. They were just high, which is, I mean, obviously.
And you get violent.
Right, obviously a dick move, because I have to imagine that probably felt like crap going right into withdrawals, right? Yeah. Yes. It's like immediate withdrawal, so it's like, worst case scenario, but it'll save your life too, though. So, and there was a lot of, I know too, there was a time when you could call the police and they would come and they'd send an ambulance, but because you're trying to save your buddy, you would get arrested because you were using with them. So now they kind of pass like Good Samaritan law, and of course EMTs would have Narcan and they'd be able to use it, right? But now they've made it so anybody can have it. Like anybody can have it at their disposal. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, it sounds like it's not like you were deliberately attempting to overdose at the time.
No,
like
nobody does.
Right. I think it just gets to a point where you're going and going and going and going, and then your body's like, see ya, bro. I can't. Okay.
I mean, you're not eating, you're not drinking, you're not taking care of yourself. I mean, the only thing that you're ingesting into your body is the drug,
Was there anything, so you said the first time you overdosed on the goofball, it was, you had a lot loaded up in the syringe. Mm-hmm. Was that how it was with the second one as well? Is that it was more than was there anything different about the time that you overdosed compared to usual?
The second time, no, it was my normal dose that I would do,
Any idea why it put you over the edge?
I mean, it could be a number of reasons, right? Like, did I eat that week?
Oh, that week.
Or it could be
week, like, I mean, we'd go weeks without eating, I mean, just wasting away on a corner. I mean, it was really dark.
That's a hell of a way to put it.
Or it could be like it could be the purity of it too. You know what I mean? Because a lot of it, a lot of it gets stepped on. They're trying to. Do you remember that one dude I bought? He had protein, and I bought it from him, and he ended up putting. He stepped on the protein powder that I got. He ended up putting like. Do you remember that?
I don't remember the details, but I remember he got like sawdust or something.
Yeah.
Wasn't it sawdust?
It was something dumb like that, and I was like, dude, this protein tastes weird, man.
I was at the apartments, right?
Yeah. I love meathead shit, but they. But I mean, anybody. Well, it makes sense. Like anybody will to make that last longer, whatever they're trying to do, will step on it, and then now you're not as pure. And then if you get a shot that's more pure, then your body just can't take it.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So then how long would you say, like the heroin, how long was that happening?
2 years.
2 years. Mm-hmm. And then what happened? Because obviously things turned around.
Like, how did I come out of it?
Yeah.
Oh, so I mean, I got arrested 7 different times, 267 days in jail on misdemeanor possession charges. And I was up at the 6 months before I finally went into treatment, I was up at the hospitals begging for treatment. I was into the resource centers begging for treatment. And here I am, just another homeless person, not worth their time, right? And the resources just weren't as expansive as they are that we see today. We've made a lot of progress in the last 3-4 years in Salt Lake.
Okay.
Like, what kind of responses would you get when you're asking for treatment?
There's nothing available, right? You're not bad enough, you
really?
know? And I couldn't get into the
I had no idea that.
I couldn't get into the treatment programs in jail because they told me my criminal history was not extensive enough to qualify for treatment.
They told you this in the jail?
In the jail.
So you got to commit a few more crimes and then we'll work with you.
To be valid, right?
Wow.
Like, I overdosed twice. You literally scraped me off the street.
But they needed more criminal history?
That I need a criminal history to get into treatment. It was ridiculous, right? And so $67 million of funding from the federal government came into Salt Lake for Operation Rio Grande.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right.
And so I was swept in that operation sweep. And so on the 7th time that I was arrested, I got arrested with one of the 2,000 people that week, right? And it was different this time. This was the first time I ever went into jail, and they put you on the intercom. Daeschel go in the room, and I'm like, what are who am I meeting with now? Like, this is my 7th time in jail. Like I'm a regular by now. And, you start to build that distrust of the system after that many times, after really trying to seek help and just getting shut down, every door put back out into my addiction. I'm like, why even try at this point, But this time was different. They had LDAs in the jail. They had the assessment team in the jail. They had everybody right there in the middle of the jail. And it was crazy. I've never seen the jail like that. We walk in to go meet with these LDAs, and it was just like this round table of services.
What's
right?
LDA?
Your legal defender.
Thanks.
Okay. And so I went and met with the legal defender. Then I met with Mark Augustine, who was the legal defender within the jails. Then I met with the University of Utah assessment team, and I was already convinced, no, I'm not going to take any help. I'll just terminate, right? And they offered me a treatment center. I'm not going to say their name because I've got a lot of love for them, but they offered me a specific treatment center. And I was like, no, I'll do 6 months and terminate. I'm not going. And the reason why was because I was selling on the streets. That's how I supported my habit, right? And I'm like, you're going to put me in a facility to everybody I sold drugs to and expect me to get better. And so I was speaking to Mark Augustine about it, and he was like, and he coached me on how to go through my assessment, and he was super supportive. And so I wasn't going to talk about my domestic violence or any of that stuff when I went through my assessment, but he's like, you need to speak about it. And I did, and I got real honest in my assessment, and they told me I was going to House of Hope, which is an all-female program. And it was incredible for me. I was always that girl, right? There's always those girls, and I was one of them of, I don't have any girlfriends, like girls don't like me, blah, 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 right? Like that was me.
It's always a little sus.
I mean, legit, right? I had issues,
so your
right?
drama.
I had issues, right? But I was so fortunate enough I got the last bed at House of Hope. And House of Hope is a women and children's program. And I didn't have my children, right? I wasn't going into the program to get custody of my children. My children are out of state. And so they had one adult house, and I was blessed enough to go there. So I did 3 months of treatment, residential, and then I did 2 months of outpatient, and then I did 2 months of sober living. But all of this was possible because of that funding from Operation Rio Grande. And my whole life turned around. So therapy was great for me, right? I learned the coping skills. I was able to work on a lot of stuff that I didn't even know was present within my life. And I started to build sustainability thanks to the funding options that I had through that program. But it was the relationships, right? Okay. So my boss today was my legal defender in jail.
Oh, wow.
How incredible, right?
Yeah. Would you chalk that? I mean, this is kind of a cliche question, but I mean, it comes up a lot, and it, maybe you've already kind of answered it, but would you say that the reason why this was effective, because sometimes people want to know, well, what was it that really helped? What was the secret sauce? And it doesn't sound like there's any one thing, but it sounds like the relationships that were there, and then a group of people who actually gave a shit enough to help you was a big part of how you were able to pull out of this. Yeah. Well,
I'll tell you the one thing, and it all of those things helped me get to where I wanted to be, right? Mm-hmm. Those were all necessary steps for me to obtain sobriety. But the thing that got me to where I am today was the willingness to surrender to the fact that I needed help, right? And I can tell you the exact moment. Yeah. It was right when the sweep was coming in on the street, and they bring the trucks in, and whatever you couldn't move, they threw away, or you're getting arrested, or all your stuff was getting thrown. And there's this famous picture of me all over the news, right?
Oh, it's a doozy.
It's crazy. And so all I ever had was a bike and a backpack on the street because I was moving around sailing, right? Just little street sailor. And so that's all I had. But as I'm rolling off the street, because I see the cops come in, there is a homeless vet on the corner, a homeless vet. Has his basket, has all of his belongings in
veteran, there. Not a person who helps animals.
A homeless veteran, right? And I mean, he's been on the streets living with us for years, right? And so, disabled, couldn't move his basket fast enough, and they were getting ready to throw everything he ever owned away. And I stop my bike, grab the basket, and I turn, and I hear click. And there's a news reporter right there from the Salt Lake Tribune.
Oh, they thought that was your basket.
And they blasted that over the front page of the Salt Lake Tribune. And the headline was, "You cannot hug a thug out of crime."
Nice.
But it was the moment that I heard that click that this went through my head. If you don't do something different, this will be the last picture your kids will ever see of you.
Whoa.
Wow.
I get
that legit
chills.
like
Yeah.
Every time I say that, because it was that moment of like, you choose death or you choose life right here, right now.
Oh, that's intense.
And it was fitting you, dude. Yeah, because I've seen that picture. I've seen because you showed it to me, and then I think you showed it at the presentation, didn't we? Because you gave like contrasting pictures. I wanted to look what's in that basket though. Can you imagine like if there was some Playboys like front and center in that basket?
He's got a barbecue. He's got a couple blankets.
It's like, whoa, Amy, damn.
Yeah, you're all, hey, it's not mine.
Hey, no judgment.
No, right? I'm not judging either. Playboys.
Had you been like thinking along those lines, and then the shutter of the camera like kind of pushed that in, or was that just like an organic thought in the moment, like just all of a sudden had that this will be the last picture if I don't get it? What was it again?
If you don't do something different, this will be the last image your children will ever see of you. Well, again, I had been trying to get into treatment 6 months before. Like I just couldn't do it anymore, right?
Yeah.
Like I just couldn't do it anymore. But that was the moment of like, no more. Right? It was that complete rock bottom moment for me. And you'll speak to so many different people who have struggled with addiction, and they will tell you the same thing. You have to have that moment, because if it's not something that I want, that I'm not willing to do whatever it absolutely takes to get sober, I am never going to fight for it. Right? You put me into treatment. You tell me to go to treatment. You tell me to choose something different. It ain't going to matter to me. Right? But if it's something that I actively want, that I have completely surrendered to, that's why treatment worked for me, because I was willing to do whatever it took to not die.
That idea of surrender, I think people hear that and then they sometimes chalk that up to like it's very so and you know this, and you're going to learn this, and of course you know this, like our profession is riddled with cliches, right? Just dumb shit that I don't think anybody even knows what they mean. But that idea of surrender is one of them. And I think a lot of people hear that word and roll their eyes, but I think about that, like, and you compare that to like you and me. I mean, I just had a surgery on my bicep not too long ago, right? I think I surrendered day 2, that this was not something I could overcome, and I needed professional help to solve this issue, right? Same thing with you. Like the moment it snapped, it rolled up, and you knew, right? Yep. And I think the weird thing about that is when you're dealing with a physical injury, your surrender is, I know it. I already know it immediately, right? And there's not a whole lot of like shame or anything associated with it. It's just like, I was pretty embarrassed about mine, but still there's not a whole lot of shame associated with it, but I am quick to seek help and follow all the instructions. Whereas that, like you're saying, the whole concept of rock bottom, like people, I think you use that as, well, I haven't hit rock bottom yet. I was like, dude, that is a concept. It's not like they'll ever have the same opportunity that, I was grabbing a homeless veteran's, basket and walking across the street and somebody took a picture of me. That's never going to happen to another person, right? The rock bottom is a concept that's different to everybody.
Yeah, it's perception based.
Right. And I'm saying like, well, and there's for sure people that have gone way lower than that, right?
Sure.
And I'm like, well, it's just a concept. So at what point can't you just say, yeah, this is an issue bigger than me, and I need to reach out for help because I can't solve this problem on my own. And it sucks because it's like everybody's toleration of their threshold is different, and it sucks sometimes people because they'll use up to the point of death, because they can't get to that point where they can just cross that bridge.
Yeah, exactly. And the hard part is like I've tried and failed to like try to help clients generate that mindset that seems to just come organically for people. Like you didn't say anybody like talked you into it, or that someone said something to me just the right way. It wasn't, I mean, maybe there was things along the way, but it wasn't that. It was a very real raw moment that whatever constellation of events happened at that exact moment, shutter clicked, boom, there's the thought. And that's what created this moment. And, we end up with a lot of clients that are court ordered to treatment. And so they're being told, like, if you want to stay out of jail, one of the things you have to do is go talk to, this dope or whatever. And so,
sucker.
Yeah. So, clients will show up and like, sometimes they hit the ground running, they're ready for change, and that's great. But other times, they're telling us what they think we want to hear, or they're just actively resistant, or in denial, pushing away their problems. All stages that I've heard you say you kind of went through in earlier on in your addiction. And is there, like, I'm assuming this is a no, but like, is there anything that you can think of that we could do in our profession that could nudge someone closer to having that type of moment?
Yeah. Show them the people who have actually achieved what you're asking them to achieve, because that's what changed me, right? I was mandated. I was court ordered to treatment.
Okay.
I was in drug court. I got sanctioned. I had the same mindset, like, I'm just going to go do my time, get out, go back to my addiction. Like, I had no belief that I could ever get sober. Right. And it was sitting in those rooms, and the treatment was great because it showed me how to change, and it showed me what I needed to change. But the only reason I changed is because another addict showed me that I could. That is what changed for me, was seeing somebody that had achieved sobriety. Right. They know, like, don't tell me you know what I've been through, because you don't know what I've been through. Right. Unless you can back that up, I ain't going to believe you. I don't trust you. I don't believe you. And you have no idea what it feels like to be me and to the darkness that I have experienced. And so that's why I love the whole peer support thing, right? I mean, you got to do the therapy. You got to dig in. They've got to be willing. But if it's going to be beneficial for them to have that person that they can have that relationship on a lived experience level, I've seen a lot of change there.
Do you feel like you can bring, like, because now you're going to be a counselor, right? And do you feel like that what unique perspective or qualities can you bring to the table that you feel like that will help people cross it? Because what you're saying is great. Like, I have to declare to clients, well, I have no clue what you felt like. Like, I look at saying, well, I don't know how good a basketball Phil Jackson was, but I know he coached Michael Jordan, so he has been doing something, right? And that's kind of like, what I'm trying to do with you. I'm not saying that I know exactly how it is, because I don't, but for you get to bridge that gap, because you're bringing not just the knowledge base of like going to training or the courses or anything like that, but you also have lived experience. Yeah. And how do you feel like that uniquely will help clients moving forward?
It's already helped. I mean, within my practicum already, I mean, I literally walk into a room and they see that I've lived addiction, right? I have daily scars on every part of my body, and I love that piece of it. I have to be very careful with that piece, right? I have to keep those lines very clear within that context of from a client to a clinician. But it has opened up, so it's just immediate trust with these clients because they know I've lived it.
Right.
Like it's just a different experience. I've never been held more accountable in my life than from another addict.
So you can bypass a lot of. I mean, I always, when we're building rapport, I think we're pretty good at it, but we got to grease the wheels for a minute before I start to impact a client. But
we don't have that buy-in with them immediately.
Right. Yours is kind of baked into the cake. Like when you go in there, you feel like you can bypass all that. It's like, oh, well, obviously, like this is a person who I can trust and listen to, and they've had some lived and shared experiences along with me. And, they're not going to be just talking out of their ass, which so many counselors do anyway.
Well, the bullshit excuses are gone.
Right.
Like I will see right through you, and that's the thing. That's why recovery community is so powerful, is because we will immediately recognize what you're doing, why you're doing it. Yeah. And we know that you can't pull bullshit with us, right?
Right.
We've played every game that you've played. And that's why the recovery community works so well, is because we're able to recognize that instantly. And we have that trust already, because I'm telling you from a place of where I have been too. Right. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a different type of connection. But which has just been great for me, which is I know my space within a clinical realm, right? Yeah. Like I'm not going to work with children, can't work with children. I know that is something that I cannot do, right? Like I don't have any interest of doing family and marriage counseling. Like,
no, that's smart.
Substance use, it's what I know, it's what I lived. and it's where I feel I can be the most beneficial, so I know where my realm is, and, but there's a clear line there. You got to be very careful, especially as somebody that's lived it, because they want to take that relationship and negate the roles. Does that make sense?
Right. Like we have this camaraderie because of our shared past.
Right.
And as a result of that,
I don't have to take you serious.
Right. This professional relationship isn't really as professional as it needs to be, because we're cut from the same cloth.
Right. So it's a delicate balance. And I know that that's something that I'm really going to have to work on as I really dive into the clinical world. Right. I mean, I've still got some schooling left. I still got, experience to build, things to learn.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Do you think, so, I mean, I kind of wonder if, you're at a certain point in your recovery where you're obviously pretty confident and able to speak on what you've been through, and you have a good idea of what it takes to help people because you've been there, you've been on the other end of it, all these things. And, do you think there's any type of client or any type of situation that you would have to be mindful of to not slip back up yourself? Anything that might trigger a series of thoughts and feelings you thought you had locked up? Or
as far as for me to relapse, type of thing.
Yeah.
I've had people ask me that before, right? My situation's different, and it's hard for me to explain this, right? I was 35 when I fell into addiction. I had social skills well developed by the time I started addiction, right? I didn't have 10 years of trauma. I didn't go through childhood trauma. I didn't have some of the lived experiences that a lot of people have that will instantly trigger them, right? I lost my mom to suicide. I needed to learn how to cope with that. Yes, I went through a horrible marriage and needed to learn how to cope with that, but that's where it ends for me. Right. So, I mean, I can hear somebody else's marriage story, whatever. It's not a triggering thing for me. I had a 2-year use. And then I went back to what I always knew is how to function in society. I had those skills. Right. So, when you think about what my recovery looks like versus somebody who has had a very hard life, who has had a long stint of use. And we know, studies show what use does at an early age on development. I was already fully developed. Or, so I didn't have the same impact and the same triggers that most people have. So it's been easy for me to sustain my recovery because I don't have all of the barriers and things that other people have had to overcome.
Well, and it seems like you're, I talk about this a lot. Like, I don't think relapses are any one thing that happens. I think it's like a series of things that happen to the point where some people don't even see it coming. But then like every life decision that you're making is either, moving you further away from relapse or closer to it, depending on whatever you're doing. And like, so what I hear you saying is that you already had a set of skills, like socially and already cognitively that were useful prior to getting into this. And then a 2-year, problem with this and back to it, which, it kind of, I like that it's almost having like somebody who's like peer recovery services. Like, I really love that because it almost is like in the work world, I think of it almost like as an apprenticeship, which I know that's not what it is. But like what I was thinking was, okay, if I wanted to be a carpenter, right? You could give me all the tools to be a carpenter, like whatever those tools are. Okay. And then say, make a cabinet. I couldn't make a cabinet. Well, maybe I would. It would be a piece of shit, but it'd be awful. I need a carpenter to show me how to do that. You know what I mean? So like therapists, I think we're good at talking about tools and tool usage. You know what I mean? But I don't think we're good at the practical things that a peer is going to bring to that knows what they're dealing with. Right. And so I know it's not a one-to-one comparison, but I've always thought about that having the peer support and being able to be in that, having somebody who's been there and done that, it helps you apply whatever the tools they are better. We're learning that. And trust me, I work with clients who I walk them through a behavior chain and I'm like, you've never done this? Like, most of us just do that in our heads on our own, and they're like, what? They have no concept of that. So having somebody to kind of walk you through that, I think is really, really kind of helpful on that front. Like, and there's probably a lot of people listening to this and they may be struggling with addiction right now. Like, if you could only say one piece of advice that they would hear, what would it be to them?
One piece of advice for me, it would be just walk through the doors, right? Like, you don't have to have it all figured out. And the scariest thing that comes when you're even contemplating getting sober is like all of the things you have to do to get it back to a normal life, right? And it's just so overwhelming and it just seems so unachievable. And when I think back about it, all I had to do was walk through the door, right? All I had to do was walk through the doors of that treatment center and just let go. Right. And I just had to let go. I didn't know what was going to happen. I never thought I'd get sober. I never thought that I was going to be able to achieve the life that I have today. And don't get me wrong, it wasn't just because I don't have triggers that I stay sober or that I was 35 and had the skills.
Yeah.
It's that I had put in the work in my recovery to build a support system, to engage in a recovery community, to do what I needed to do to stand in my own integrity and build a life, because this was my one chance at my own rebirth, right?
Yeah.
But all I had to do was just walk through that fucking door.
Yeah.
And just let go.
Yeah.
I love the simplicity of that, because the recovery process itself is such a like multifaceted, like intense thing to go through over time that like that can be overwhelming, but just kind of get in the door and we'll take care of it. You know, we'll as professionals, we'll walk you through it. We'll get you connected with people, but just to take that step, literally
and you're
going to
hate it. I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to hate it.
So expect that, right?
Expect the fact that you are going to be the most uncomfortable you have ever been in your entire life.
How do you make that okay with yourself?
You let go. You just remind yourself, I'm choosing this so that I don't fucking die tomorrow.
Hell
Yeah.
Right? And I had to have that narrative every single day, like one more day alive. One more day alive. I hate it. I hate the girls around me. Mace, I feel concerned that you left your dish in the sink. It affects me in the following ways. I can't live in a clean house. Like, are you kidding me?
I feel you're a bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
As long as you started with I feel.
It is literally like the most uncomfortable place to be, right? Because it's like I'm a grown-ass woman. I'm 40 years old and I'm sitting in a treatment center, you know, with 18, 17, 25, all ages, right? And I have to learn how to function in this. Right. And I just kept going back to that same thing. You
must
are alive
have trusted
today.
the process too. You
I
must have
had to let go because I did not want to die. And the hard days, that's all I had to tell myself. Wow. And then I start to build, right? And then you start to hear the stories, and then you start to build the relationships. And, you know, treatment's not fun. God, right? Dude. If it was easy, we would all be sober. We wouldn't have an epidemic going on right now if it was so easy to get sober. It's hard as fuck. I ain't going to lie.
Yeah. Then you have one of us sitting there. We're like in the group. We're like, powerful. What is that? What is that? Like, you know, like, man, I sit in conferences and stuff. I hear people all over the damn place. I'm like,
is it reassuring?
Well, so, and you're definitely like you've took it to another level, because now, I mean, you do really good work, particularly, I mean, the crossroads between substance use and the criminal justice system is a razor thin line, right? This is a neurobehavioral disorder that we have chosen to criminalize the 100%. Behavior to get there, right? And so I think eventually, when I'm teaching, I always talk about this, like, you're going to cross paths with the criminal justice system, and you just need to get used to that, right? And there's an elegant way of going about that. But you now, like your career and kind of what you represent now, can you talk a little bit about that, how you're helping clients?
So, I mean, I started early within the behavioral health space, right? Working at a treatment center as a support staff. And then I went from there to working at VOA Detox. And I worked from VOA Detox to USARA as a peer support specialist within the hospitals is what I did. I would deploy 24/7 into every Salt Lake County hospital. And so that's where my passion started to come from, right? As I started to work, and that's why I went into social work. I was like, oh yeah, this is what I want to do. I'd be driving home 2 a.m, meeting with a client in the emergency room and just having a connection that I would never have. And I'm like, this is bigger than me, right? So that's where the social work passion came from. That's why I'm in school. That's why we're getting the degree. But then I started interning up on legislation, right? So every legislative session I started to intern, and I was like, oh, you're gonna hear me, right? You're gonna hear me, because the system is broken. The system is broken. I had 29 charges, right? I mean, there was only, I want to say 13 that were criminal. The rest of them were all minor infractions and stuff. But just a turntable of just, you're sitting on a corner and I'm getting criminalized for putting a needle into my arm, right? Like my crimes were against myself, but yet I have a criminal history record that's going to just put so many barriers for me in my life, right? I was just charged and charged and charged and charged and charged, and I wasn't hurting nobody. I was sitting there and I had paraphernalia and I had drugs, and you caught me, right? Like, and now forever I'm going to have to be held down by this criminal history report. When I got early into recovery, 12 housing applications I was denied. 12. And I'm supposed to sustain recovery, and I'm supposed to like not have any recidivism back into
pull
the
yourself
jail,
up by your bootstraps.
But I can't get an apartment, right? I got a job, right? I got a job. I'm paying my taxes, but nobody will give me an apartment on a possession misdemeanor charge, right? And so there's number one. So I started to get angry. And so I'm like, what can we do about this? So I started interning and I started learning about the legislative process, and it just sparked a fire in me. Now, within the relationships that I have built within my recovery, I was super blessed. Again, it was Operation Rio Grande. So every legislator, every politician was involved in this. I became very close friends with Congressman Ben McAdams. And he has been a support for me since day one. I still talk to him to this day. Senator Hughes, same thing. He's been a massive support for me, and Noella. So I had such a great support system. I had the right people, right? And so they started pulling me in, like, okay, come be a voice. And I was this token heroin addict recovery success story, right? And it was a lot of pressure to be that person. Every news station wanting a story. Amy, former heroin addict. Amy, former you know, but it was an opportunity to be a voice.
So you were using that as like not just like a token heroin addict. You were using that as a platform to say, oh yeah, but hey dummies, while we're doing this, a lot of things need to change if you 100%. Want other people to be successful. Right. 'Cause, yeah, I could just hear people being like, why don't those junkies just pull themselves up by the bootstrap? Like,
right.
Okay,
right.
Easier said than done. Like, that's not...
And try getting denied at 12 different housing applications.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I am I'm doing everything I should do, and everything's working against me. So
barrier.
Right. And which, again, that just kind of makes you be like, wow, okay, why am I even doing this at that point? Yeah.
And I fit the mainstream's media like narrative, right? Here's a white girl from Utah, you know, I mean, let's talk about privilege. I use that privilege to my advantage. Like if you're going to give me a platform, I'm going to use it I'm going to use it to every advantage I have to help try to change the system.
Sure.
So long story short, kept building my relationship with Noella Sudbury. Noella Sudbury is an attorney by trade. She is the attorney that passed the Utah Clean Slate Law. And so we had maintained this relationship throughout the behavioral health industry, right? And so I was working for Utah naloxone at the time with Senator Jen Plum. And Noella calls me, and we started doing some legislative pushes to get the Utah Clean Slate Law passed. And so I went up and I spoke with Governor Cox. I spoke with Noella, shared my story, you know, and just started trying to help push that narrative to get that law passed. And it was passed on February 10th of last year. And then Noella called me and was like, you know what about all the people who can't have automatic expungement? We need to do something for the ones that have felonies. We need to give them a pathway at a second chance, because 800,000 people in Utah have a criminal history. 800,000. Yeah. And studies show that within
2 people in this room.
Well, yeah, with months of an expungement, their pay goes up 20%, but 75%.
Say that again.
After expungement,
yeah,
within months of their expungement, their pay goes up 20%.
Wow.
To not have that barrier, to not be a criminal, right? You see a theft charge, all of a sudden you're going to have to work 10 times harder to prove to me that you're not a thief because I'm giving you a chance at employment, you criminal. Right. And 75% of people who apply for expungement don't finish the process because it's too costly, it's too expensive, it's just too many barriers. If you don't have legal representation, you're not going to finish it. It is a ridiculous process. Wow. And so Noella Sudbury, being the human that she is, was like, we need to do something different. So she called me and she's like, let's start RASA. She's like, let's start RASA, where we do 3 expungements for $500. We'll do 402 reductions to get people out of felony status. Let's just start chipping away at this. I mean, think about it.
RASA stands for
$166 a case.
Yeah.
That's unheard of for legal representation.
Wow.
Because you could go to an attorney, but they're going to charge you what? I mean,
that much to even listen to you.
I've personally been through 3 expungements. I did the one through Salt Lake County when Salt Lake County offered their expungement clinic, right? I still paid $3,000 on my first expungement.
Wow. And is that like, and RASA stands for?
So RASA means erase. It's Latin for erase.
Oh, okay. So it's not an
acronym.
I feel like an idiot. Yeah. So is that just out of the kindness of her heart, or how does she keep the lights on?
I mean, we barely do, right? We just help as many people as we can.
Damn,
we
dude.
are a startup company. I mean, we are the company that has investors right now. We're keeping afloat. We've got a big overhead, but we care about the mission, and that's what's different. We're getting ready to expand nationwide, right?
But I'll bet though with that though, I'll bet you have so many people that can utilize those services. Like, because normally if you get one client as an attorney, you're like, okay, let's do, however many thousands of dollars, and okay, and that'll sustain me for a period of time. But if you get a ton of 800,000 clients that have criminal history, that's a huge market. That, I mean, and I'm not trying to think of numbers. I'm saying like that's just smart on your guys' end to do it that way, but also like completely feasible for somebody who's looking for expungement to say, oh, $500, like I can scrape that up to get these things taken care of. You know what I mean? Like it's very doable and realistic. Whereas other times it's like, oh, I'm not even going to try.
But the problem is the government fees. Right. So we charge $300 for $500 for 3 cases. Mm-hmm. Right. But the government fees are more than the attorney fees. You're paying $150 per case just to file it with the court. And you're paying $65 per case to BCI just to obtain a certificate to file it. So if you've got 10 cases, that's 10 cases times 150 times 65.
Why so much?
Because they're government fees, which is why we are up on the hill fighting these fees. That's so wild. Last year, Representative Dunnigan passed a pilot program, and he passed a pilot program, House Bill 392, to waive those fees for a year because we wanted to get the data showing how many people would access recovery or expungement if we did this waiver. 75% expungement petitions were up.
Wow.
Just that 1 year. And now that ended June 30th, so we're going to be back up on that hill again this
Asking
year.
for dude, it reminds me like I because I'm a hunter, right? And so this last year I was super happy because I finally got a suppressor for my rifle. So I'm not the only jerk up there when we're hunting making really loud noises when we're trying to be as quiet as possible. I was like, yes, AKA a silencer. But when I put in for that, dude, it was I paid. It was almost $300 that I paid for, not just for the fees, right? And then I had to do all this paperwork and fingerprints and all the rest of it. And then it went somewhere for almost 2 years before I got it approved. And
Super efficient.
And I'm like, hold on.
2 years.
I want to be able to attach a camera to that piece of paper and see, like, or anything. I'm like, what is taking this money and taking so long? Like, where does that go? Where could that possibly have gone? Does it sit on some dude's desk? And then, he's like, not today, and then like
it's government efficiency.
I'm serious. I wonder, like, could it be more efficient? Could you move past some of those things? And does it really, and obviously it doesn't need to cost that much for this. And
they've already paid their restitution. They've already done their time in jail. They've already paid their debt to society. But we're going to put all these more barriers for them to get this cleared off their record when it's been 15 years since the conviction or since the probation ended.
And I have to imagine, like, people like Representative Dunnigan or right, I'm saying that right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Or any of those people, they want contributing members to society. That's what they want.
Right.
They want tax-paying citizens, right? That's what they want. So it seems like in everybody's best interest to get the show on the road and get people back to square to where they're functional again.
No, are they making it hard intentionally, or is it just
it's just how the system's always been?
Yeah, it's just a broken system.
And so now after we pass clean slate law, let me tell you how long this process is. We passed that law. There's 800,000 records that are eligible now for automatic expungement under the law, which means now the court's got to start identifying them, clearing them out. We have one agency in the state of Utah, the Bureau of Criminal Identification, that does the BCI certificates. So what they do is you apply to them, and they go through every criminal history you have in the state of Utah, and then they deem you eligible, and they will give you a certificate number for each case to file with the court. You cannot file with the court without that certificate number, but it takes 4 months for BCI to process your application. So you apply, you wait 4 months, you finally get your BCI certificate back, okay? So now the attorney files, right? You file it. Well, under the statute of law, they have 60 days to respond. So there's another 2 months. So you wait 60 days and hopefully the prosecutor responds, or if he doesn't, then we got to wait 60 days under the statute to petition the judge for a signature. Then the judge signs it, right? Then it goes to the court clerk, and then the court clerk puts their little stamp on it and sends it back to BCI, which BCI is going to take another additional 8 to 12 weeks before they notify every entity, FBI, police, jail, whoever was associated with that case, and order them to remove it from their system. All said and done, you're looking at about a year. It is a very
Heaven
long
forbid
process.
somebody's on vacation somewhere in there.
And in this year time frame, you are trying to find a job and get an apartment and live, but you can't get one because you have this criminal record. Like the barriers are just unheard of.
Yeah.
You're in such a unique position. Like hearing you rattle off this series of events that happens. Like you have more of it. I've never had it explained like that. Like you've got the inside track. You're captivating enough in the way that you speak that you've got all these politicians' attention, talking to us, sharing your story. Like there's emotion in your voice, but clear articulation. I mean, you're uniquely qualified for this exact thing. Yeah, it's pretty badass, actually.
Thank you.
No, very impressive, actually. No, and I mean, I genuinely, that's kind of why I was saying it'd be a good idea to interview you because, not as I think, well, for all the reasons Jeff just said, but I mean, I just really appreciate people that have turned around and are genuinely trying to give back because, and I think that just is a testimony to others. It's like, oh yeah, well, this is doable. Like we can do this. It's tough. Nobody ever said it was easy. You know what I mean? But that people can hear that and this is definitely doable. Because I mean, do you kind of feel pumped when she talks about those things? I'm like, yeah, dude, like, you know what I mean? I was like, I don't even have an addiction. I want to do that. Yeah. Not that I want to start. I'm saying that like it makes you kind of want to get involved and like do those things. And it obviously puts an emphasis on, hey, what are we doing here? Like, let's make things better. So no, I'm glad you're in the position you are in because I think you can help a lot of people.
I mean, I got to think Noelle Sudbury, man, she's just a phenomenal woman. She was an attorney right out of law school, worked as an attorney at law school, was a vice president of Goldman Sachs. Like she's had a career. And then Mayor McAdams, when he was mayor at the time, called her to work as this whole Rio Grande thing.
And you're good at giving praise to other people when we try to give it to you.
I know.
I mean, I appreciate that, but I've had a lot of incredible mentors along the way, right? Awesome. That have allowed me to embrace, the opportunities that they've been giving me. And then amongst the recovery community, if I didn't have the support from the recovery community, I wouldn't even be sitting here in front of you today. Because
not to mention wonderful teachers.
It's really the professor that made it.
Yes. Okay. Well, no, that's we'll have to. I assume you talk to Noelle. We can get her to come and talk about this, right? She'd probably want to pimp her ride.
She's great.
Cool.
We can even pull Destiny Garcia from Clean Slate. We'll just pull them all together.
Sounds good, man.
Would be awesome.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, website.
What?
So for RASA, www.rasa-legal.com. If you are looking for attorney representation, if you need a 402 reduction to get out of felony status, or if you just don't want to deal with the process, give us a call. We are happy to help you.
If they just RASA Utah.
RASA-legal.
No. I know what you're saying. I'm saying, let's be honest. Nobody does a www anymore.
They
just go to Google.
If they Google search RASA legal,
just do RASA
Utah.
legal.
There
It'll
you
pop
go.
up, right? Like, for the simple people out here. But
you tell me, when was the last time you put www? Like,
Yeah.
ever?
But I think it's important to mention.
How do you do a
Clean
dash?
Slate.
Shift.
Clean Slate's a good option too. Clean Slate's a nonprofit organization. So Clean Slate Utah, just Google Clean Slate Utah.
Yeah.
And that's a nonprofit organization. They will pay for your BCI application.
Mm-hmm.
They will do your fingerprints. They will help you with pardon work. They're a great resource as well. So if people are really looking at it, you can do both organizations.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is a promise to come back as another guest spot
100%.
with us. Okay.
100%.
I'll make you do a pinky swear because you don't want to touch that guy's hands.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, thanks for coming in. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Bet.